people come out to this bridge to go bungee jumping. Yesenia and her boyfriend, they get in line. Yesenia is starting to panic. Suddenly, bungee jumping looked terrifying. And so her boyfriend, he's trying to calm her down, but she did tell her boyfriend that she's not about to back down. And then finally, Yesenia and her boyfriend reach the front of the line, and the staff members are putting on their harnesses and getting them ready. And then at some point, one of the staff members finally says, "Okay, jump." And so Yesenia jumps. It would turn out Yesenia had made a mistake. That staff member was talking to her boyfriend. They had not attached the actual elastic rope to her ankles. There was nothing stopping her from smashing into the ground. Yesenia did not die from impacting the ground. She actually died from a heart attack she suffered on the fall down, which means she must have realized after she jumped that she jumped too early. And so literally the fear of what was about to happen to her killed her. One Friday night, Molly calls Rachel to go hang out in the cemetery. So Molly drives in the gate and they park. The girls started to smell a bonfire. And so they only get a few steps up this hill when they are suddenly hit with this disgusting, putrid smell. Rachel, she's like, "Let's go, we gotta go." And the two girls turn around and begin walking back. When Rachel just turns around to look, and standing at the top of that hill is a man. But then she realizes he's walking down the hill towards them. And they start running up the hill, and Rachel looks around, and now this guy is running towards them. They run to Molly's car and they speed out of the cemetery. The next morning, her mom's like, "Someone I work with, she got kidnapped." The person who had kidnapped her had killed her and then tried to dispose of her body at the cemetery by burning her in a bonfire. Rachel suddenly felt sick because now she knew what was happening last night. Rachel immediately pours her heart out about everything that happened the night before, and so her mom tells her, "You and Molly have to go to the police station." But luckily, within 48 hours, the police actually caught this guy, and so he went to jail. Because, I mean, if Harry Houdini can't perform this stunt, then certainly no one else can either. But in 1990, a daring 32-year-old man named Joe Burris decided he would be the person who would finally conquer this infamous stunt. And so with all these TV cameras rolling, the assistants walk up to Joe and they begin shackling his wrists, and they put these chains around his body, and then they lifted him up and put him inside of the see-through plastic coffin. And then this coffin was lowered into the 7-foot pre-dug hole that was right nearby. Once Joe gave the signal that he was ready to go, they would fill this hole in, and the stunt that he would perform would be to escape being buried alive. As they're watching this hole and as they're filming this hole, all of the cement in the hole suddenly drops about a foot. And what she saw was absolutely horrifying. That popping sound she heard outside of the plane was the sound of the engine underneath the left wing exploding. When that window broke open, Jennifer, who was sitting closest to it, was immediately sucked through the window. So no one is looking around, taking stock of what's going on and assessing what to do next. Everybody's in survival mode and is basically just focused on themselves. And so despite Holly yelling out and trying to wave to people, it was worthless. Jennifer was just stuck out the window and no help was coming. And it was during this time, as Holly is holding on to her waist and she's holding on to the girl, that Holly is thinking, you know, Jennifer, she's been stuck outside the plane where there's no oxygen for almost 10 minutes. Nobody can survive that. But there's a detail in Holly's story that makes her experience even more traumatic. He normally would just eat the apples that were right outside of his house, but he had always been tantalized by the sugar apple trees that were inside of the fenced-off section of Komodo Island. This section was, of course, teeming with Komodo dragons, and so as a result, the locals basically fenced it off. But Mohammed had always wanted those sugar apples. He'd grown up here. He never got to have one. And so this day, for whatever reason, he decided, today's the day I'm gonna get one. And so after looking around and feeling like the coast was clear, he hopped the fence and he ran out to the sugar apple tree. He's reaching out and extending his arm just far enough. He wants to get one more apple, and he loses his footing and he falls to the ground. And then she hears the sound of two Komodo dragons running through the tall grass. She can see the grass moving as these two massive creatures are running and grunting at full speed towards Mohammed. Mohammed, when he fell, he had cut himself, and they smelled his blood and they charged over. The authorities were able to get out there pretty quickly, and they were able to get the Komodo dragons off before they actually consumed him, but he was already dead. So Skylar, she stands up and she turns. Her back is to her two friends. And as soon as she starts walking, what she would have heard is the sound of her two friends standing up as well, and then loudly saying, 1, 2, 3. And on 3, Skylar would have felt two knives being plunged into her back by Rachel and by Sheila. Sheila tackles her from behind. She gets her on the ground. She pins her on her back. Between Rachel and Sheila, they managed to hold Skylar's hands down, at which point Sheila and Rachel began taking turns stabbing her in the chest and in the neck. And at some point, she just kind of gives up and she says, "Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?" And eventually, Rachel stops stabbing Skylar, but Sheila doesn't. Sheila keeps on going until, quote, her neck stopped making gurgling sounds. He caved and said yes, he would tell them the full story of what happened to Samantha, but they had to get him an Americano coffee, a peanut butter Snickers, and a cigar. Once he had said items, he began to speak. And what he said was so disturbing and so graphic, the FBI still has not released the full transcript of his confession. It would turn out Samantha was not Israel Keys' first victim. He was in fact a serial killer who specifically preyed on completely random people because he enjoyed watching them die.